75.
75.
Still here.
You whispered that one in.
Yep. We have a topic.
We have a topic. We actually, this might be a lot of fun, much more so than our standardized, I don't know, what?
Yeah. Standardized blather.
Well, you have to have times of really, really hard work, and then you have to offset that with just fun, right? And on a podcast, I feel like the most productive amount of time to be spent is to highlight what the productivity looks like. But then obviously we are still human beings and we have all kinds of experiences outside of hardcore work. But there's plenty of hardcore work that we don't highlight. That,
Yeah.
Like we took a very long break from recording once again, and then it was a lot of work, at least for me in there. So anyway, so the episode I want to talk about, which I don't think we have talked about all of these things. I think like we brought them up, and then I have always said like, oh, we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about it later.
Mhm.
But like maybe like go into details about all the crazy stories that happened to us that are part of Unexplained.
Yeah.
Right. Now I say Unexplained is this like mystery, like ooh. Oh, well, is that?
That was some sort of like UFO.
Okay.
Oh, I turned into like a ghost.
Yeah. But all of it is basically examples of how our three-dimensional space is being shared with or occupied or has a lot of bleed through between higher dimensions, right? And these are just going to be our stories, but like there's thousands and let's say thousands, millions and millions, if not billions of stories, right?
Yeah.
Each person probably holds, more than for sure a handful, if not dozens of these unexplained things. But all of them come down to we are interacting with something that is either perceived this way by us because that is the closest thing that we need to relate to, or is actually that, and it's completely from a different space.
Yeah.
Space. I say it when I say space, just space.
Yeah, this will be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a lot, so I'm hoping you can offset mine a lot with yours.
At the very least, I can think of stories that we've heard or you've heard from other people that will, it'll be a third party story, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay, so this is this came into my mind a couple of days ago, and I was thinking, okay, this is not really crazy, but this is the beginning of crazy. And so I am visiting our friend's summer house, and I'm maybe 6 or 7. Yeah, it's an old house in it's not even a village. It's just an old country home that belongs to their mother. That actually at the time the mother was still alive there, and they have the whole large properties. I say large, Ukrainian size large, and the house sits.
How big is Ukrainian size large? An acre?
No. Before they started selling them off, it was bigger, but I would say maybe 10, 15, 20 acres. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like she has an apple orchard.
Oh, so it's a good size.
Yeah. And then most of it is around her property. And then she has a whole other chunk like elsewhere.
Gotcha.
For potatoes.
Oh, I remember. Is that the potato farm you were left at?
The what?
Is that the potato farm you were left at?
No. That's a whole other story. But,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know. No. So anyway, I come in and this is one of my first times there. And for some reason, I'm wandering along. They have kids my age, but I'm wandering along. And I remember I told you this story, but I'm talking it now from the, non-3-dimensional standpoint. I realized now I was drawn energetically. Like we went to a thrift shop over a weekend, to like a
peddler's market.
It's like they sell rinky dinky stuff.
Well, like everybody you can become a vendor, and then you get a little booth, and then you can list all, put all your stuff you got, and a lot of antiques and old stuff, and like weird stuff.
Yeah, but while we were there, we were walking around, and I was, I guess, attempting to see how much I can feel. Basically, that is the easiest place to practice extrasensory perception as far as identification of ghost, because it's full of ghosts.
I meant to bring we have an EMF reader. I meant to bring it.
Yeah, and so
Forgot to.
So anyway, as I was practicing that, this came in, and I remember being young, right? When you're 6 or 7, you don't really realize like what's happening to you, and so you just act on your intuition more so. And I'm intuitively being drawn to a place, and not necessarily in the positive way, but just being drawn, right? And I go in, and it's this shed area, and in shed, I don't know if there's a car in shed or not, but there's a sack of, I don't know, let's say wheat or barley or whatever sitting there. And on top of the sack is laying a cat, and she's in a lot of distress. And I'm like, oh my gosh, now I realize I'm drawn there because she was in distress and she needed someone to help, right? And, all while we were growing up, we would always do some sort of hand healing or things like that. And so I go in, and I'm being drawn to this, and I start to pet her, and she's in so much distress that I'm just, like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to heal her and pet her as a child, not realizing that I'm trying to heal her and pet her, right? But I feel like me being there, now I realize me being there was basically intuitively helping her in that situation, right? And so at some point, I decide to put her in my lap in order to make her feel better. I don't remember. And I have this bright red gypsy style skirt on. That's really nice. And unbeknownst to me, she ends up delivering kittens onto my skirt. And I'm, of course, in shock because I did not expect this bloody goo to be coming out of her. And so I'm just sitting there, and I'm covered with kittens, and I'm like screaming at this point, and I'm like shoving them off. Yeah. And so she delivers kittens right there whenever I'm helping her deliver. And so since then, I have realized I have had stray cats come into our house, because in Ukraine, you basically usually, like, if you live in a house, you have like a window pane that is completely open for the cats, so the cats can just freely come in up and down.
Yeah.
And then we had random cats come into our house to deliver kittens in our house.
Wow.
Because they knew they would be safe.
Wow.
And so we had a neighbor's cat who was not our cat, and the neighbor would do not so nice things to the kittens. And so in order to make sure the kittens were going to be alive, she would deliver them with us, but continue to be a back and forth cat between him and I.
Wow.
And she was a 3-legged cat. So it was really hard for her to jump through.
Yeah. Which one is she missing? A front or back?
Front right. I'm pretty sure it was front right.
But that's continued to this day, as far as, cats coming to us.
Cats coming to us. Things in distress show up out of nowhere, right? Like all the experiences that I had that I might bring up in this one, right? With the homeless woman and the and other things.
Yeah.
Right. Things in distress show up, and I'm supposed to do something. The universe brings them to me because I'm supposed to do something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's still the case still this day.
Since I've been with you, we've had Isis and Hampton and Haley. 3 cats have just come to us out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, like us not seeking them.
Yeah, we're not actively looking for a cat, but yet here comes a cat, or here's a cat out of the blue by a stranger.
Yeah. No, so that was one that I thought, okay, it's not supernatural per se, but it's a, like, when you're younger. This is what I want to say in regards to that. When you're younger, you'll have, like, as an adult, you'll be able to look back at all of these experiences as a child that were like weird, but yet like intuitively guided. And within that experience kind of will be the essence of your soul that came here to earth to do something, will be explained by these weird experiences when you're a child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah. So that, I thought I would start with that one.
I'll jump in with something that is a little supernatural. So when I was I don't know, 12 maybe. I like the way our house was laid out. That we had I guess the family room with a couch and a television. And for some reason, I leave that room and I walk down the hallway toward our front door. And over to the left of this is I don't even know what room it was. We never used it. but then past that was the formal dining room. I say formal dining room as if it was super fancy. It was just the dining room. And it had we also never used that. We had
for Thanksgiving.
For Thanksgiving. We had 2 rooms we just never used.
That's America, though.
But we had this, I don't know, armoire style chest that all of the fancy china was in. Gosh, look at Elliot. He's got 2 rooms he doesn't use in fancy china.
Well, no, I think it's a dining hutch. I think that's what they're called. Because at the top, it has the glass where you display the china, and the bottom has all the drawers.
Yes, that's exactly what. Yeah, and as kids, we weren't allowed to touch that either. So
you're not allowed to touch the hutch?
We weren't really supposed to touch that because that had the expensive stuff or the nice stuff. I don't know if it was expensive or it was just sentimental. And it's dark. It's nighttime. And I walk to I don't even know why I walk down that hall to the front door. So I'm still 2 rooms away from this, but I hear one of those hutch drawers close because I can tell exactly where it's coming from. And it's the sound. I'm familiar enough with the sound because we would play with it even when we weren't supposed to. And I don't think anything of it. I just figure, mom's over there doing something. I don't know. And I come right back to the TV room, and there's 4 people in the family. So all 3 of them are still sitting there. And I'm like, were any of you over in the dining room? Like, no, we've been here. I'm like, and so I kind of freak out and I run over there and I turn the lights on and there's nothing there. The drawers are closed, but I heard it. I 100% heard it. It was real. I don't know what it was.
Yeah. What do you think it was?
The hutch was probably haunted. Let's be honest.
But the hutch belonged to your grandmother.
My dad's mom?
Yeah.
Oh, did it? Oh, maybe.
And she passed away.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things they kept from her.
Okay. Maybe. Yeah, I don't remember that. Maybe it was her then. I don't know.
You didn't think it was her?
At the time, I didn't even know it was my...
I'm pretty sure. Anyway.
No, I mean, that sounds plausible. that sounds right. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty sure it was her. And then the dining room chairs and the table was also part of this whole set.
Oh yeah, they matched pretty well, didn't they?
For some reason, I wanted to say it was because your mom was saying that that's something that they took back from Michigan.
Oh, well, there you go.
Could have been her.
Could have been her.
Yeah. Yeah. No. There's like when we went to the Bedlar's Mall, the one of the areas that had a, let's say, presence in it was a hutch.
Yeah, that reminded me of it.
Yeah, and hutches are interesting because like usually you put your most prized possessions into it, right? Like
the things you really care about, you really want to protect.
You want to display is behind the glass, and so you kind of want to showcase and display. And so like even though the items inside might be gone, you could still be attached to the items, but like just imagine the size of it that can hold your attachment, right? And hutches are big. So it does have something to do with not only, because if you're attached to the item, right, it is easier to walk through, and then that item will just basically have an end potential of radiation. I say radiation as if it's not poison, but end potential of.
If it's those uranium plates, it might be. That was like a thing during like the 60s or 70s, like uranium glass or uranium glaze. These orange, bright orange plates. It's made with some sort of uranium infused stuff. They're lightly radioactive. And it was like, oh yeah, everybody had them. I don't know why.
And ate off of them?
Oh yeah. They did a study and they're like, yeah, if family ate off of these plates every day, it's still just basically a negligible dose. But
less than Chernobyl.
Huh?
Less than Chernobyl.
Less than Chernobyl, yeah. But still, radiation seems like one of those less is always better than more.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I thought it was, I'm pretty sure, I don't know how we would ever check this, but maybe sometime in the future we would check this. I'm pretty sure it was your grandmother's. And then at the time she was already passed away.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, with her, she would be attached
Where's where we kept the seashells?
Her, I don't know if
Because we had seashells from some
the
vacations.
dining, the set.
There were seashells in the bottom left drawer. That I remember. Yep.
Cool. Yep.
I've got one, but let's go back and forth.
Okay. So wait, some other ones. Let me see. Which one should I go to next? Unless you have something on top of your mind. Let me see. Do I want to go straight into the crazy one? Yeah, I guess I'll just go straight into the crazy one. So this one is, so I moved to the United States in 95, and which I was 13. And so, let me see. At this point, I have my first car, and it's a 97 Chevy Cavalier. So it's like a year old. We bought it a year old. And now, the fact that I have the car and it's a really cute car. I think it was $11,000. So there's all these years. There's all these numbers. I remember that it was very important. And anyway, at this point, so my mom is working. My dad is working. I'm home alone and we live in an apartment complex. And I have to go to work. I think I have to go to work. And I'm home alone and I go downstairs and I open the car and I try to start it and like the ignition clicks and it doesn't turn. Like, is that correct? Is that what it is? It like clicks, but it doesn't let me start it.
Yeah, the starter doesn't engage.
Yeah. And so then I'm like, oh, the car's broken and I don't know. And so I guess I don't know what is it that I do with the key. I'm assuming I take the key out. And I go back inside to call mom to tell her that, I think that's what happened, to tell her that, hey, I can't get my car started. Do you have any?
I assume you tried a couple of times.
Yeah, I tried it a couple of times. Yeah, because
that's what you do.
Like you're 16. I'm 16 years old at this point, right? Maybe 17. Yeah, maybe 17. I don't know. It's 15 or 16. No, 16 or 17. Anyway, and then at some point I go back down. I don't know if I have talked to her or something, but I go back down. And I open the door to try again or something. I don't know what it is. And the car has melted itself.
The dashboard.
The dashboard, like behind the steering wheel, is completely melted. There's that smell of electrical fire. Nothing's per se is on fire, but it sure does look like fire. Like everything is just like imagine plastic just dripping and melting, and it's dripping on the seat, and I think it was on the seat. Anyway, so 17-year-old me, let's say, I have no idea what to do. And I'm just screaming and I'm just standing there kind of screaming, but just in shock, right? And then out of nowhere comes this Russian, he worked as a maintenance worker in the apartment complex, but he happens to be Russian speaking, but I think he's like from Georgia or one of those what are they called?
The Stans?
Not the Stans, but the Caucasus.
Caucasus?
One of those. So basically either Georgia or whatever. Probably, let's say Georgia. He looks Georgian. He has that little Georgian scrappy attitude. We talk a lot about Georgians. And
talk a lot about Georgians.
Yeah, because Georgians, they're just, they're former Soviet, but then they have this whole other...
Seems like they get stuff done.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about Georgia. Anyway, and so let's say he's Georgian or somewhere from over there. But he's Russian speaking. I know him. I don't necessarily like him. And so then he has the wits to realize, I guess he's an adult, like let's say he's in his 50s or 60s, to disconnect the battery. So he disconnects the battery for me. And so the car is no longer melting. I mean, it's continued to melt from the residue, but the battery is no longer piping juice.
It's no longer getting worse.
Yeah, it's no longer getting worse. And so this is, so I am, to I guess explain the emotional situation that I'm in. We're rich. So $11,000 is a lot. We did not have $11,000. So this car is still being paid off. run alone. We live in the shitty apartment. We're poor. And so to me, the fact that the only thing that we have is this car, the only thing that I have is this car, and it's now gone and destroyed, is a complete system override. And at the age of 17, I am basically just losing it. And I had a heart condition and maybe still have a heart condition. I don't know. And so I am sitting on the floor. I don't know why I'm sitting on the floor of this apartment complex, staring out through the double pane balcony window onto this car, losing, bawling. Like, do you know whenever you go into a crying fit that is just like
like that?
But that's almost at the end of it. But like, to begin with, it's just nonstop crying.
Yeah.
And you try, and like, it's not screaming, but it's just nonstop crying. And I'm on the loop and I can't get out of this fit. Like, and my mom is not there, dad's not there. So there's no one there to stop me. And I'm just losing it. And I think basically what's happening is I'm working myself into some sort of panic fit or / heart attack. Because right, like my 17-year-old self does not understand that I need to regulate by any means. And so I have no idea where this would have went. Like, I don't know where it would have progressed, maybe into a heart attack. I have no idea. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, so the balcony door is opened. And then they have those, cheap long blinds.
Oh yeah. They're sort of they always get tangled up. Somehow.
Yeah. So they are scooched over, and the door's open, and I'm staring at the car. And then we're on the second story balcony, and this car is down there, and I kind of see the car, and I'm just sitting there bawling, crying on the floor next to it, kind of staring at the car because somehow that's going to make me feel better. And out of nowhere, comes flying in this ginormous hawk, just like, I don't know. It was just, I know that sounded like a crow more than a hawk, but it just swoops in and it lands on the balcony railing and establishes eye contact with me. And like in the most you just
look into your soul,
look into my soul. And I'm just, at this point, all the crying has stopped and I'm literally in shock. Whatever this hawk did to me by swooping in and just sitting there, and it's ginormous. It feels ginormous. I mean, that now that I think about it, hawks are not that bad, but less than 10 feet away, and maybe like 5 feet away, sitting on the balcony.
That's like other than a vulture, it's like the biggest bird we have around here.
It felt ginormous, and it's just sitting there, and it's staring into my soul, and my entire system basically goes into this new shock of now staring at this hawk, and we just lock eyes, and I don't know how long we sit there. But my entire system just completely melts away. And so my heightened state of panic just goes down into, I don't know, probably theta or a delta, to where I'm just in complete peace staring into this hawk's eyes. And anyway, so it sits there. I don't know, time passes. I don't know for how long it sits there. Seems like forever, but honestly, it probably wasn't that long. And then it goes, quack, or whatever the hawk would do, and it poops on the balcony, and it flies away. And I'm just sitting there flabbergasted about this whole scenario. That obviously, I was a child. I was in complete distress. Something needed some kind of occurrence. So one, of course, the guy came in and disconnected the battery, which was the fact that he was just right there and happened to be right there and knew exactly what to do was already intervention from the spirit world. But then two, I'm inside of the apartment, so closed off. How are you going to get someone to me? How is the world of spirit going to get something to me in order to interfere? And because the apartment door was open, I was staring out of the window. I guess their thought process was, oh, we'll just send the bird. We'll just be a bird and we'll send the bird in and shock her into whatever
slap
state.
in the face.
Yeah, and it was a complete slap in the face, but it was in the most gentlest way. And honestly, I don't know. I mean, I know this doesn't sound life-threatening, and now as an adult, if this was to happen, I would be upset, but I wouldn't be losing it. But I think as a child, there was just such a overwhelm to the system, right? It was that shock of helplessness to the system that I had no idea how to handle that. And then the shock of it sent me into this crazy mode. And so the hawk was just like, rah! And I was like, ah. Anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it was probably life-saving, because I don't know where it would have ended up. I mean, maybe not death, but, for sure some sort of, I don't know what. Maybe definitely a much larger trauma.
Yeah.
It ended up being.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I just to complete the story, it turns out that that line of 97 Chevy Cavaliers ended up being recalled for some faulty wiring.
After they blamed you.
After they blamed me for doing it, yeah. And
how could you conceivably do that? If you even if you wanted to, what could you do to do that?
Yeah, it was. I don't even know if they exist anymore. It was Bachman Chevrolet, I think it was at the time. But yeah, that's where we got it. And then we had it for less than a year. It was like, the car was a year old, and then we had it for less than a year. And so it was just completely melted down. So yeah, but no, I ended up driving it, and they just kind of like replaced the dash and replaced everything. And then like a year later, we get this notice of like, yeah, if you're driving this and this, here's a recall for faulty wiring. So, but yeah, it's kind of a weird little story. But
did you have to pay for it, or did they replace it?
No, they somehow made an exception for us, one-time exception or whatever. I didn't. For all I know, it went through insurance. I don't even know, but which would probably dinged us.
You're paying for that in a different way.
Yeah. So no, I don't know. It ended up being fixed, but at the time, as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, I was just in such a shock.
And it's if it was me, it'd be like, it's fixed. Is it really fixed? Is it going to happen again? I don't know.
Yeah. Ever since then, ever since that happened, not only the concern to me to begin with is like, wait, this is going to be a lot to get it fixed, which was a lot. I think it was like $1,400 or something, it was either $700 or $1,400. I don't remember what it was. But of course, the smell, that melted plastic smell. So they had to like detail the whole car in order to try to get that out. But then with me, I had this ongoing fear of driving
every time you start the car.
Yeah, every time I start the car, I don't go anywhere, and like I make sure it starts right. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot of fear just driving that car post. Just not knowing. But then after the recall came in, honestly, like that notice was almost like a godsend, because they could kind of diffuse it for me. I'm like, oh, okay. Looks like it's a problem. Looks like they know exactly what it is. And looks like if they replaced everything that was replaced, and then this is recall, then it was taken care of on my end.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was that's the one that stands out. And ever since then, Hawks have been kind of like
spirit animal.
Yeah, spirit animal, and around a lot.
The RX-7, second generation RX-7 was plagued with call it a design flaw. There's a fuel pressure damper, which is basically a rubber thingy that, when the
gasket?
Not a gasket. It's like imagine like a balloon, like the edge of a balloon over the end of a pipe, so that it can fluctuate a little bit and absorb the pressure, so that there's not like, how like if you slam a valve off real fast, it like the whole house goes bang, the copper pipe, so that doesn't happen inside the fuel lines. But it's this really thin rubber thing, and then it's like pressured fuel, thin rubber thing, exhaust manifold. So here, this thing's 1,000 degrees, and then there's gasoline, high pressure gasoline, being held back by a thin piece of rubber.
It would melt.
It would, not that it would melt, but if it ever ruptured, you lose the car and possibly the house that the car is stored in.
Oh.
And there were just so many RX-7 fires that
it was never recalled, or just an innate flaw.
It was just a design. It was never recalled.
But there's nothing you can do to even fix it, because that's just the way it is.
That's just kind of the way it is. I mean, maybe, I don't know what you would even do. I mean, it never happened to me, but it was always on my mind that that's just not a good design.
Yeah. No, I don't know what this was. It was something. But yeah, I love that Cavalier.
It's still taking last we heard.
That was
a long time ago.
That was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
This is not really, I don't know, this is not like yours, but
well, no, mine, after this one, nothing is profound. So, but yeah.
Well, this will be profound.
Oh, it's profound.
Well, you were there. We were on a date once at a restaurant. And
what? We go on dates?
Go on dates. Remember that?
Oh my gosh.
Remember those?
What?
And
I'm having, so to begin with, should we add a disclosure? At this time, we were still drinking alcohol.
We're still drinking alcohol.
And I was having a bad day. And so I decided to get a head start. So I was already intoxicated.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Before we left?
Before we left, I already had, like a glass of wine.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. And you were driving. And I felt bad because I was already like, oh, I feel so bad because I'm already feeling good. Because so we went through like a slight alcoholic phase where we used.
Slight?
I mean, we were not, like, we didn't lose our house to alcohol.
No, we're high functioning alcoholics.
But I felt bad because I was like, so anytime I would feel like shit, alcohol was the solution, right? Instead of like awareness, which is what this podcast is, alcohol was our go-to. And so we go to our favorite restaurant, and then usually at the restaurant we have drinks there too.
Yeah, and I had, I don't know, a drink or two, but so after dinner we just went for a walk down,
which we usually do,
down this right out of the restaurant, right up this road, and this it's an interesting end of town. It's
like an old city that is like, it's been gentrified.
Yeah, it's very gentrified. But there's a lot of, I mean, at the same time, there's very expensive restaurants, and there's also like homeless people. So,
well, sometimes, yeah, I guess so, weird homeless.
So
people, yeah.
it's a interesting end of town. But we get on this, we start walking, and we're, I don't know, a block or two away, and we're
not intoxicated enough to the point where we can't walk.
It was like, no,
just like a light buzz.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. This is not the alcohol doing this.
Yeah, this is not the alcohol, but it probably didn't hurt.
Because we've done this plenty of times.
Yeah. We've been more drunk than that plenty of times.
Yeah. But we're just walking, and then both of us, like at the same time, get this overwhelming sense of like peace and unity and connectedness, and everything looks different. And I don't know how to describe it without sounding crazy.
Yeah, so I think what happened is we basically touched on the universal consciousness. Like now that, we have explored all of these different realms of interpretation, I feel like that's the best way to describe it. We touched the unity consciousness of one, us, as a whole, and then two, the basically the creator or the source, right? And so we saw everything through this lens of oneness. And nothing was unknown, right?
Yeah, like, nothing mattered.
Nothing mattered. Everything was perfect.
Yeah.
And I was just like crying.
Yeah.
There was a lady who was sitting at the time there was a Panera Bread. It's not Panera Bread anymore. There's a lady who was sitting there, and I saw her, and she was just sitting there in sorrow. I don't know why, by herself. And I looked at her, and it was just so beautiful. Like the fact that she was human and she was having this human experience. And I was just crying because it was just beautiful. Everything was beautiful. That
whole event was really profound and impactful. And it was like this glimpse into what life could be, should be. It's like, it was like, this is how life really is. And then we dump all this crap on top of it. And here we are worried about furnace filters and toothpaste and stuff. And it's like, but there's this amazing beauty right underneath it. But we're all here at this stupid surface level.
Yeah, no, but whenever you're on the path of like awareness or spiritual enlightenment, the universe, this is what we have figured out, gives you like these glimpses or gifts. So then you have something to like reference.
Yeah. This is maybe 2018-ish, 2017, 2019, something like that.
But this is before we're on our spiritual path. Yeah. So the universe will just bring in these elated experiences of whatever you need at the moment, right? In order to have you anchor into something other than the false narrative that you're experiencing, right? And then, like at the time, think about this, like our idea of going out on the date and then drinking alcohol is more of like chasing an experience. Do you know what I mean? Like, because that's our dates back then were that.
Right. And there's an interesting subtle difference between, chasing an experience and, just sort of having an experience, being with an experience, there's a difference that's really hard to articulate, but it's subtle, but it's important.
Yeah.
But it was,
At the time we lived like for those moments, like the idea that we had the opportunity, because if the dates are limited, right, and we have an opportunity to go on the date,
scarcity,
scarcity, right? We put this special factor on this idea, and then the whole thing is being driven out. The energy that is being pushed forth out of it is coming out of like less than, and this has to be our special moment. And it always was. I'm not saying it wasn't, right? But it wasn't just like, oh no, here's just another special moment. And because every moment is a special moment, right?
Yeah.
And so the alcohol with me was also like, oh look, you're feeling like shit, you're trying to run away from something. Here's how things are. So it was basically kind of like this gift of like, look, here's how life is, period.
Right.
Without the chase, without the scarcity, without the numbing, without anything.
Right.
Right. And so like, then when we started this process, we could always like reference it back. And then the time was like, we're so far away from that reference point. You're like, I didn't even know that exists, but it was so truth. And both of us experienced it in this cumulative event.
At first we were both like, do they put something in the food?
Yeah.
But it didn't feel, it didn't feel like drugs. In fact, I didn't feel the alcohol at all during that.
No. Yeah. If anything else, the alcohol was actually gone. Because it was more clarity, right? Alcohol was just like...
Yeah, it was, everything was super clear.
Yeah,
it was weird.
And then like the vision was clear. I'm trying to compare it to mushrooms. Like on mushrooms, like with, how mushrooms have all the other side effect of visual and sensory perception and all that. But like there's this clear knowing, like in between all the crazy stuff, you have this just knowing. So that would be the only part out of the mushrooms that I can pick out. So if anybody has experienced psychedelic experience in that clear knowing, it was just that moment without any substance.
Yeah, it was like a moment of bliss or ecstasy, like in like a religious ecstasy type of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, religious ecstasy. I could see that. Yeah, but because we felt one with God.
Yeah,
and then
we walked by a church, of course.
Yeah, and then
just amazing. You walk by was it old fire station or something? And and it's just, you're just like, probably look like Indians, like, oh my God, it's so pretty. The grass is so amazing. I don't know.
Yeah, and it was bliss. It's interesting, now whenever I go, sometimes you and I are like in the higher vibratory state, and sometimes we're down in the dumps. But whenever we're in a higher vibratory state, I can feel that just naturally, more so than ever before.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's that heightened, but and honestly, it was that heightened because it was in comparison to what a low was.
I think that's
I think it was just like this complete opposite of what we were at the time. That was probably the lowest point of our blindness, right then. I wasn't doing the worst stuff in my life, but I was still continuing to numb. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. But again, the universe will give you these things. A book that I'm finishing reading is still that same book about our origin that is partially channeled and then partially referenced by, I don't remember what the guy's name is, but he claims to be a hybrid. And he, I don't know if he says that, but he references a lot of ancient texts, and he says that the earth is getting ready to split to where a majority, half a population will basically go into a higher consciousness. A lot of people say this. This is something I read recently, therefore it came up into my field of perspective again. And that some population will ascend into higher conscious realms, and the other population will continue to stay in this 3-dimensional nonsense. But then something that he pointed out is that at all times, those who not choose to, or unable to, or choose to, whatever you want to call it, not to ascend because their vibratory frequency is still so low, will be given these glimpses, right? So they will always be reminded of like look, you know what I mean? They're not going to be left behind completely, but they will always be given a chance to open their eyes to something different, right?
In the previous episode, I talked about the yugas, and I said that we were right at the very, very bottom of the Kali Yuga, which is the so when I was editing, I looked it up. Correction, but maybe it applies to this too. There's 4 Yuga states. There's the Golden Yuga, which is a pretty long time. The whole entire Yuga is 26,000 years or something like that. But the Golden Yuga is like, I don't know, 7,000, 8,000. It's a long time. Then there's the Silver Yuga, which is a good while. Then there's the Bronze Yuga, which is a little while. Then there's it's 2, but they're back to back, 2 Kali Yugas, which is a relatively short time. I think it's 2,400 years. But the middle of that was 500 AD. And the end of that was 1700 AD. And so we're in the next upward swing Bronze Age. We're a little bit into it, and it goes through 4,400 AD, right? So we're in the early part of it, but we're not at the bottom.
I've seen charts. There's the dude on Gaia that we started watching, and I did not like his voice.
Yes,
and we abandoned him.
I think that was the one that was the guy who.
This is the guy you found?
No, that when I went, I'm like, oh, I need to find the Yuga picture, and every Yuga picture it looks like that. It's like, oh, we're not at the bottom, we're over here. We're like 7 o'clock on the wheel, and it goes clockwise, but we're like. And the 6 o'clock being the bottom, we're at 7.
Is that what you remember?
I remembered us being that 2012 was dead 6 o'clock at the very, very, very bottom. That's what I remember from the show we watched.
So
but
here's
everything that I saw today. Was different.
I want to say I think this is interesting because I think here's what's happening. The information of where we are in the Yuga has changed.
Right? Is this another Mandela thing?
Mandela thing or shift.
And what do you remember?
I remember because I vividly remember it is because I wanted to learn more about the Yugas, and we abandoned it because I cannot stand the guy's energy and voice.
He does not have a good voice or energy.
Well, the voice is representative of the energy, right? And so I just couldn't stand it. I'm like, I wish I could listen to this, but I can't. And so we abandoned it.
Turn it off and just have subtitles. Mute it and just have subtitles.
But I guess, yeah. I mean, half of the time I'm reading subtitles anyway. And so, yeah, I remember, and honestly, maybe at the time it was also a little bit depressing because I'm like, oh my God, we're like literally at the bottom.
We're 50 generations away from the top.
Yeah, right. But at the time this was in the beginning of our spiritual journey because I got pushed into the Vedic teachings a lot in the beginning. But yeah, and so with the book that I'm reading and how he references the Yuga, and this is different than, I guess, what you just said still, is that he mentions Yugas as a complete cycle. And then that the Kali Yuga actually completes the cycle and goes into the golden
I saw
age.
One thing, but it wasn't clear if it was a representative of the cycle or it was like a pie chart showing how much time they all take.
Okay. And no, he does talk about transition. Obviously, it's not like that, right? But he does talk about the transitional phases. I saw some that have a couple 100-year phases between and stuff. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God, I've seen like 15 different takes on this that all imply different things. And I sort of picked one for the podcast, but I did not. But when there were dates on there, every single one had present day 2025 or so at about 7 o'clock on this into the bronze.
Silver or bronze?
Bronze. From Kali, which is iron.
Okay.
To silver. I'm sorry, to bronze, to silver, to gold. There's a lot of gold. Back to silver, to bronze, to iron.
Oh, okay.
That's the cycle.
Okay. Yeah, which, I mean, it would make sense that there's this transitory phase, but I guess what he was implying, and then I guess what other people who channel imply, and everything that I'm getting implies, is that it's not going to be
I mean,
this
we're
arc.
we're talking 10,000 years before.
Yeah, it's not going to be this arc of so, and this is not a doomsday type of a podcast. I know I've said a lot of doomsday stuff, but there will be something that will basically just have this immense shift that will shift us out of the cycle that we have been very used to. Like, so the cycle that we have been going around, and this was a natural transition, it will just shift us out. And I'm not saying we're not going to be in a different cycle or a similar cycle, but we are going to be in an upgraded version of that cycle. And I don't know what that means. I can, extrapolate and say that I do agree that there will be this huge shift in consciousness to where those who are on a spiritual path will basically be forced to, like, so those who are starting to squint their eyes open, right? As opposed to you and I are like digging trenches. But those who are just squinting their eyes open will just be basically pushed into that path. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
you will be forced onto the path by force. No, your soul self came here for this path. So you will be that little voice inside your head that is calling you towards something will just basically, now it's going to be a speaker in your head. And you'll be like, oh, no, I can't go any other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, no, you will always have a choice. You don't have to go into the point of awareness and ascension and anything like that. And it's not ascension in the sense that we're dying off like Jesus, revelation prophecy type of a thing. But it's this natural process of taking this form and starting to experience it on a larger scale of interpretation.
Yeah.
Like our experience at that restaurant or post that restaurant on our walk is that, right? We're still in our form, but we're seeing the world from this whole other lens.
The perspective that event gave us was transformative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it that is the path we're going to. So, do you have another or?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
And I have, I don't know if you have one, but I have. You'd have to tell it, but I have a prompt that would get you going on something.
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, yeah, I mean you can do yours.
Okay,
whichever.
All right, we might have talked about this before on the podcast, but we were in Puerto Rico in 2021.
Oh yes, I remember this one. Yes, this is one.
And we were there a couple years before, and we stayed at
This is the third time we were there.
Third time?
Mm-hmm. We were there with Aiden alone, and we stayed at the White Hotel, the La some whatever that we visited.
La something or other, and then we stayed at the L something or other. Okay,
and then we went there for like a 3-day weekend to the other one, and we're there with the little Annabelle.
I remember because we worked on the
on one of our clients' websites
that.
Then.
Because I remember that, because I'm like, this project pays for this vacation. This is great.
Yeah. Right. So that was the second time. And then remember we visited the La whatever. And then the third time, this is COVID time.
Yeah.
We go to a third place.
Yeah. Because it was like, oh, we can actually visit because it's in the United States.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, it was San Juan. So we always go to San Juan. Like I think we took day trips, so we have never stayed in Puerto Rico or anywhere other than San Juan.
And so this is the third time we had walked by through this little square. It's actually technically a triangle at the end of this road. This is a nice little park area.
Well, no, third time, third trip.
Third trip.
But the first time on this trip.
Yeah. So we've seen this before over probably getting close to a decade.
Yeah.
And we go.
But this is post-COVID.
Yeah, and we go there in 2021, and it's just overrun with chickens. And we're like, oh, that's weird. There's chickens everywhere. Chickens and roosters and hens and just in the trees and
and the pigeons too.
And a lot of pigeons.
There's always pigeons.
There's always pigeons, but there's pigeons everywhere.
Yeah.
But the chickens are in the trees. I'm like, they're not the best at flying. It's more like hopping with style, but they get up in the chickens in the trees. I didn't know this was such a thing.
Well, if they're to protect themselves from the ground predators,
right? Sure, there'd be cats
in the
and
wild.
Dogs and stuff.
You have to go up at night to stay safe.
Yeah.
So the trees are not that tall. These are shorter trees,
shorter, scrubby looking trees. But yeah.
So maybe the tree is 5 or 6 feet, And so it's not that much of
it's
a
like,
how. Yeah.
That was a tricky
It
sound.
was cute.
And so the whole time we're like, whoa, why are there chickens here? Where do they come from? And we're just wondering this.
Mm-hmm.
And it never occurs to us to ask anybody, but we're just wondering this.
Well, there's no one to ask. So every single day we stay there, we would go and feed the chickens.
Yeah. And so we're sitting down on a park bench right there, and the kids are out, I guess, feeding the chickens or something. And you and I are just sitting on this park bench, and this lady walks over, and she's like, I bet you're wondering, and we were literally wondering why.
No, I said, I want to know why the chickens are here. I said this to Universe. I out loud spoke. I'm like, I want to know what the story with the chickens. How did the chickens get here? And this is, I want to point this out. The lady walks up. I see her from across.
Yeah, she didn't hear you say that.
No, she didn't hear me say this. This is what I issued a statement to the universe. I want to know the story behind the chickens. But I'm always connected to animals, of course, hence the beginning stories is a cat story, and then there's the hawk story. So there's not an animal an animal in my stories. And I see her beamline towards us. Just like the hawk, she established that eye contact with me, and she's going across the square, and I can see that she's purposefully walking towards us. This was not an ordinary I'm just going to casually walk up, feed the chickens, and just happen to say something to this person on the bench. This was another one of those beams.
Yeah. So she just walks over, and she's like, oh, I bet you're wondering why there are chickens here. And we're like, why, yes, actually. And she goes and she tells us the story that a year or two ago during COVID, right? So this is 2021. So I guess a year before, a chicken or two escaped from was it a restaurant or a
it was some farmer who had chickens, not like a outskirts farmer, but somebody because San Juan is a poor place.
Yeah.
So if you get 2 or 3 blocks out of the downtown area, there's people who would have chickens.
Yeah. And some chicken escaped, and he found the park, and he thought it was nice, and he went back and he brought all of his friends, and they have reproduced. And we're talking hundreds of chickens live there now, between either the ones that he brought or the descendants of them.
No, she clearly said that the chicken came, figured out that this was a safe place. But, at the time, San Juan during COVID was obviously closed down. So this was not a bustling tourist destination.
Right.
Because there's no tourist. So the place was probably pretty calm.
Yeah.
And then he went back to get his friends. And then they're like, okay, let's go escape out to this park. And so since then, they have just taken over this little park.
Right. It's great.
It is great. The only negative, I grew up, we didn't have chickens, but our neighbors had chickens, and my cousins had chickens. And then the farm, the summer house we would go to had chickens. They're very big at digging.
Yeah, they destroy the turf.
Yeah, so the grass is sparse.
Yeah.
Because they like to they dig and scratch around, and they roost and they pick the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was great.
So and then she kind of disappeared.
No, after she said everything she needed to say. I asked her all the questions. We went back and forth. The conversation was super strange because, I know she was a human, but now that I think about it, no.
Yeah, I think she was like an angel or something.
Yeah, and it's because she came there to tell me the chicken story.
And then, I don't know where she went. She
just left.
But I don't remember her walking away. It was just I mean, it's not like she dematerialized
she
in front
walked
of
away.
us.
I remember thinking she walked, but it was very abrupt. The conversation was very... how humans have this flow.
A normal. Okay, well, nice to meet you. Blah, blah, blah. It was just none of that. Yeah,
boom.
It was weird.
Done, just like the hawk one. Poop and go. Yeah, that was crazy. So yeah, but again, in that instance, right? I literally a lot of the times, unbeknownst to self, I proclaim statement into the universe, like a question, and that I want answered. And then inevitably the universe delivers things in the most interesting way. So I have one that I'm thinking of, but let me know which one did you want to bring up? This might be more fitting.
This isn't your story, but it was your old boss's story, who was a missionary in Was it Africa or something?
Somewhere in South America. I think it was Haiti.
Okay.
Yeah, no, so yeah, this is, again, I will say this, I don't have details. And now, I do believe him. So he was my boss back when I was straight out of college. So I'm like 21, 22. We're not married yet. And he was a Mormon missionary. I guess Mormons, whenever they turn 18, the boys go out on mission to sometimes in the United States, like to a different city in the United States. Or sometimes, I guess those who choose to be brave go to a different country altogether. And it's either he goes to Dominican Republic or Haiti. I don't remember where it is, but somewhere in the South. Yeah, in the Caribbean. But, Haiti is kind of known for their, like if I had to generalize, is known for their little voodoo hoodoo stuff. And anyway, I'm pretty sure it was Haiti. And so he tells the story.
I thought it was Africa for some reason.
No.
Okay.
No. Maybe it was, I don't think it was Africa, because who would go to Africa?
That seems like a place that people would send missions.
I don't know. Anyway, so he's Mormon, so he's a kid, right? So let's be honest. When you're 18, or let's say, I think it was 18 or 20, however you old, I don't know if this is.
Yeah, I don't know if this is before college or after college.
I don't remember. I have known several Mormon men who went on missions, but I don't remember. But they're young. Like anytime I see them, they're young. Like
yeah, they're kids. I mean,
they're kids.
Kids to us,
they're just kids, and then this is their first life experience of like out and about on their own, right? And then they have the mission to spread the word of God.
On one hand, that sounds scary to do, but on the other hand, think about the adventure that would be.
Yeah, right. Because he talked about it for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and I talked about this event for sure.
Yeah, and other Mormons that I have known have always talked about their adventures. Right? You kind of get paired up with some random
it's
person.
you and Joe.
Yeah.
And you're off to Haiti.
Yeah, and you got to learn how to get along. A lot of them, and this is a stereotype, but actually, this is kind of weird. That boss was Mormon, and then I had another boss who was Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had two Mormon bosses, and the second one said that they make great salespeople because they through this missionary work you basically are taught to just walk into a blind situation and you have to strike a conversation, get them to like you, right, and then have to be
your goal is to
cordial enough to engage.
Yeah, and your goal is obviously to convince them. Ideally, convince them to
convert
convert.
Yeah.
You're selling Mormonism.
Yeah. Anyway, so the story, this is his, I guess I'm paraphrasing everything and then I hope I can even remember the details, but he's a kid and he's in some poor third world country. And in the middle of the night, wherever they're staying, they get a knock on the door and this lady who doesn't speak English but realizes that he's a church. He's a holy man. They consider him a holy man because they don't understand what Mormonism is and mission, but they know that he's a holy man, right? And so they drag him to their house in the middle of the night. And of course, he's a kid. And he walks into this house and he says there are chairs and plates and chandelier, not the chandelier, the light is swinging, the chairs are hovering off the air. There are just plates flying around, like hitting.
Something out of The Exorcist.
Yeah, like almost like he literally explains this whole thing as like an exorcist type of and he's like, I am just scared shitless. Like he's like, I am terrified. And she brings me over here because I'm supposed to deliver a solution to this problem because I'm the man of God and God is supposed to stop this, right? And he's like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, and this is what's interesting is he said, I did not believe in any of that crazy stuff, right? Because this is a Mormon, ghosts and spirits and demons or whatever. You're not taught to believe in extra sensory or extra dimensional supernatural things, right? And so he's like, I cannot. He's not, because now at this time when I was working for him, he's probably in his mid to late 30s, maybe early 40s, and he's like, the reason I'm, like I was a non-believer, but when you walk into a situation like that, and chairs are flying and hovering, and dishes are being broken, and there's this, the house is literally in chaos because the exorcism type of things are happening. He's like, you just cannot not believe, not believe. And he's like, and the only thing I can think of doing at the time was start praying, because like, what else are you going to do? And he just starts praying. And then things, I guess, calm down. I think that's what he says. Just things just kind of calm down. I don't, realistically speaking, what a prayer does, it inserts a different frequency. And if your prayer is strong enough, right, then you can basically override the frequency that is causing the chaos.
Yeah.
So from the spiritual standpoint, that is what a prayer is. It's a insertion into a frequency, and then intent behind the prayer basically overwhelms the other. And in this case, if it was a spirit, right, from another dimension that was causing chaos, the only reason, one, that I want to say that he was able to come in there is because they were in distress, right? So if the family is already vibrating a certain frequency, the only time somebody else can come into that space and actually interfere that easily to where they're having control over material form is that if you are allowing that frequency to come in. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so they went to him, right, because they thought he was a holy man and he could do it. But what a holy man does, what a priest does, what a shaman does, is simply comes in with their own sovereign frequency, right? So like, one, don't fall into, don't come in and get sucked into the fear, because then you can't do anything. That you're just adding on to the power of the frequency that is already there. Yeah. So the issuement of the prayer, so his belief in God, which is what it equates to from the spiritual Christian standpoint, it has to be strong enough to when the prayers are issued, you're bringing in a frequency of something else. And when you're inserting the frequency of that else into that space, it quite literally just like goes bloop, and you override the hovering of the chairs and the breaking of the plates.
Yeah.
Now, is it gone? Technically, no, because the second they're going to get back into that frequency, that opens up the door back to the same entity who was able to come in before that. But if they are overall are able to mimic the frequency of the Mormon, the most profound thing, like I said before, was that he said, I was not a believer. If you told me that there's ghosts, or if there's spirits, or if there's demons, or if there's something to exercise, he would have not believed in any of that. And he's a kid, right? He's 18 or however old you are when you go to the Mormon missions. So that was the most, because at the time he was telling me the story, I already believed in it. And we just had like a funny day at the office where we shared each other's crazy stories. And that was just what he shared. From the like religious or shamanistic standpoint or spiritual awakening standpoint, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same, right? The goal behind all of these teachings is to give you more and more opportunities to enter into a baseline of something different.
Yeah.
And the more time you spend, so I mean, this is kind of like the key to all spiritual awakening or all ascension or all religious gnosis or, whatever line you're following, right? The goal of all teachings, and, it comes down from just the essence of the mission of your soul. Like if I had to classify it as like, okay, well, what's at the top? Like if there's Christianity and Hinduism and Sufism, right? And Buddhism and Judaism and all these isms. And then there's the shamanisms and, and then the spiritualisms. There's a lot of isms. And then spiritual awakening and awareness and mindfulness and all that other crap. Like all of these terms are all saying the exact same thing, is you have to connect to the larger scope of you, right? Larger scope of you. And I say that up is because the larger scope of you is just a higher vibrational frequency than the
shitty normal.
Well, shitty normal, but then the lost version of you, right?
Yeah.
So all of the teachings, regardless of what they are, all of the self-help books, the Tony Robinson is also kind of part of it, except that there's a monetary spin, on his message. But everything that everybody is doing, regardless of their implementations, are only what they're. It doesn't even matter. Like, right, the reason why there's 2,000 flavors of everything is because something will register with somebody else and not with somebody else, right? And for those who do not believe in extraterrestrials, the Christianity and Jesus walking on water will register. And those who do not believe in shamanism, then, Hinduism will register. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everybody can grab onto something.
There's a flavor for everybody.
And so the goal, really, the only goal that everybody's teaching is for you to raise the frequency, for you to start letting go of some teachings call it what would be the right word for it? I guess, the way I would describe it, your dense self, but it's the illusion, right? The illusion that is you, right? That's important to point out, is your form right now, like, you and I in this form are actually an illusion, right? And I know it's hard to say, is because then a lot of people don't want to admit to, like, wait, that means everything I'm experiencing is not real. Well, technically, yes, but I don't want this to be a depressing factor. And the goal is to raise yourself above the illusion and then awaken, really open your eyes, quite literally, just open your eyes to that experience that we had at that restaurant, right? When everything was oneness, right? You kind of have this trajectory. But how you do that, an easiest way to do that is to dive into all of these little esoteric teachings and the yoga and the meditation and, the Hinduism here and the Buddhism there and Sufism there. Like, you and I do not follow one path to awakening. We follow the path of, well, guess what? If you just keep on dropping the frequency of everything you don't want, sooner or later, you're just left with the only thing that is left, which is you, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it is. What other story? Or do you have another story?
No, that was wait. Did the chickens? We did
chickens.
You
said you had a prompt from.
That was the prompt. Your boss was the prompt.
My boss was the prompt. Yeah. Okay. So, we don't have. I guess we don't have to be running with this too much. I had several that came up that that I'll say it fast so this episode is not too long. This is not necessarily like a crazy story, but it's kind of like. It maybe like showcases what you and I are, or what I am, right? Like, so from the beginning, right, when I told the story about the cat and me drawn to the specific location, and it was a location of a distress, and so in that case, I'm literally offering healing, right? So some people just come here to vibrate a specific frequency, right? And then as they're able to transverse their human nature, I say that, and then basically raise the frequency, then they are just basically going to be guided to go in all kinds of places to spread that frequency. And I have always known that about myself, but I always struggle because it seems like such a non 3-dimensional holding of a space, right? And so we've been doing grid work. And then for those who do not know, grid work is you either through your own. So if each one of us basically is an energetically vibratory being, right? And then just like, for example, on the story of this Mormon individual praying, right? And so then he's inserting through the prayer his frequency into that house and then changing the frequency and then basically experience of the house through his prayer. Some people just can do that through just their mere presence of being alive and walking. And then when you recognize that and you can insert intention into your walking, then it amplifies. And so then the more you raise your frequency, in our case, then the more your scope of reach amplifies. And so, we have been doing grid work since 2019. But I realize it was all my life. I've been walking around and basically locking in grids. And to begin with, I thought I needed to offer some kind of physical aspect to the place. But now I realize, no, it's just quite literally just my presence and my intention just kind of like locks in frequency. And so this is, we do this everywhere, but this story stands out. And I don't know if you know what I'm going to say. So we traveled to Chicago.
Oh, no, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's another story that you can bring in. We traveled to Chicago. And we were about a 5-hour drive away from Chicago. And this is post-COVID-ish time. I don't know how far post-COVID is. I don't even remember what year it was. Do you remember 2020 or 20?
I don't know what story you're telling.
The only Chicago story that is worth telling. Anyway, so the goal is to drive into Chicago. We're going to stay at a hotel downtown. And then I want to go to this art museum. I have always wanted to go to this art museum.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so we spend a day. I don't remember. Oh, yeah. So we always go to the Maggie Daly playground with the kids and we do the putt-putt there. And then the bean. And so that is always like our thing that we do. And then, of course, eat somewhere around downtown.
The bean's all locked off now.
Yeah, but back then it wasn't locked off, I don't think. Or maybe this is COVID, so maybe it was locked off. I don't remember what it was. And so the day 2, we're supposed to go. I literally booked in advance tickets because at the time, this is COVID.
They're only letting so many people in.
And so I had to buy tickets in advance. And so I'm super excited about this museum. just thrilled about this museum because I've been wanting to go there. And then we have a friend at the Buddhist Center who was just like, who has a girlfriend there. And then he was just pumping it like, oh, you need to go. And I'm like,
and it's really hard to get the kids to go to an art museum.
Yes. That is something that I wish kids were better at. So we have to invent these little games in order to like,
bargain with them
in order to get into an art museum. Botanical garden is absolute zero. So I will not be able to get them to go to a botanical garden. So like I want to, but we can't. But the art museum is kind of like something I could push them to.
Yeah.
And of course, this art museum is gorgeous. And we staying at a hotel that's called the London House. It's on the river, on the Chicago River.
Yeah.
And at night, we don't think anything of it, but we hear the ding, 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 ding sound of the bridges. And I'm like, oh, that's weird because the bridges are raised.
I didn't realize. I heard the ding, ding, ding. And I'm like, because it's, it sounds like a railroad crossing. It's the exact same sound. And I'm like, I'm in my sleep days. I'm like, oh, I guess there's a train somewhere nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because, Chicago, they have all these, drawbridges over drawbridge. I guess it's called a drawbridge.
Mm-hmm.
Over the river to let
a lot of the drawbridges.
A lot, because the whole river goes through the middle of the city, and every now and then a tall enough boat comes through, and they have to open them up.
Yeah.
And of course, you cannot drive across it.
Yeah. So this is the day we're supposed to go to the museum. The London House is on the river, and the museum is on the other side of Chicago.
No, it's not that far. We walk to it.
Yeah, I mean, walking
it's
other
probably
side,
like 5 or 6 blocks,
but
maybe 10 blocks.
Yeah, probably 10 blocks. But it's from the river to the outskirts of the downtown area, like the tall building downtown, like before you reach the Natural History Museum, but kind of like actually on the other side of the Maggie Daly Park, right?
Maggie Daly.
What did I say?
Maggie Daly.
Oh, whatever. Anyway,
make the parks great again.
So we wake up and don't think anything of it. And then, so basically, then the first thing we usually do is we have to find breakfast for the kids. And we start looking at breakfast places.
I don't remember what day of the week it is. Was it a Sunday?
I don't know what it was.
Because like the breakfast places were all closed. And we can't figure out why. Yeah,
so we walk out of the hotel. We go to Michigan. Is it Michigan Avenue or Michigan Avenue the other way? We get to the Michigan Avenue.
Yeah, because we were right on Michigan Avenue.
Or on the other side of it. So we behind the hotel is Michigan Avenue. We get to Michigan Avenue and we started walking down Michigan Avenue. And things and now I realize things feel weird.
Things certainly felt weird. There was a weird air in the air.
It's just strange. And I'm like, well, maybe it's like a Sunday and like Chicago is, how European cities feel weird because Sunday mornings they're closed. And so like, it's just empty. I'm like, maybe this is a feeling of empty. Now I realize, of course, like post everything, you look back, you're all like, no, it was. So things are weird. And then like, I see some windows being boarded up and I'm like, oh, I guess, this is COVID. And so maybe there might be some riots or some protests. And in Louisville, they boarded up Louisville back when they had protests just as a precautionary measure. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe how are windows not being boarded up, not registering at this point? And we can't
find breakfast because everything's closed.
Yeah, so we're walking around and everything is closed. And so the only thing we find is this Krispy Kreme or some donut place. And we literally end up having donuts for breakfast.
Which is not what we usually do.
Yeah, no, we would never have donuts for breakfast. And that's the only thing that is open, which also doesn't dawn us. And we walk probably 10 blocks.
Yeah.
And
more broken. Do we see? Can we tell that the windows are broken yet?
I don't know if we can tell. Like, I don't think anything registers. Like, for some reason, we're in some sort of fugue state where nothing registers. And eventually we come across and we turn the corner and there's Walgreens and they had one of those revolving doors and it's just shattered and we see the glass.
Not just that, but like half the windows are shattered. Just, giant, 8 foot by 8 foot glass panes just broken.
And then we look inside the Walgreens and we see that it's looted. Like there's just... I mean,
all the alcohol is gone because that's what that's the valuable
we look
stuff.
Inside and we realized, wait, like it has been looted. And so then this is probably an hour. It takes us an hour to get from the hotel to get breakfast and then down to where the museum is. And only then do we realize that this is a morning post the Chicago riots.
Yeah.
And we are walking the streets, which is safe.
Yeah.
But we had no clue for 10 blocks that glass was broken everywhere.
All the stores were looted.
There's, people are quite literally boarding up the broken windows.
There's police everywhere. Yeah.
Did not dawn on us.
The ding, ding, ding was because they raised all the bridges to like, okay, well, the riot stops here because you can't, what are you going to do? Swim across the freezing river?
Yeah. Well, the police was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so then I realized, oh, wait, the museum is not opening. So I get a notification that like our scheduled time that we're supposed to be there, guess what? We apologized, but due to the riots, you're not going to the museum. And so it dawns on me, I'm like, wait, something happened last night. And then there's a police officer on the street and I start talking to him and he's like, yeah, last night, the whole Michigan Avenue and then surrounding streets were rioted. And then he's just talking about in this distress. And then I see an elderly woman and an elderly man sitting on like Chicago has a lot of these raised flower beds on the side of the road, like on the walking path. And then they have a lot of flowers and shrubberies. And there's a man and a woman sitting there and they give me this look, which later on I realized they were not human. But they smile at me in this like comforting, knowing way, like, look, you're here and we're here and everything is fine. I never felt unsafe. And then later I realized, oh, we came there because it was going to happen. And then somebody needed to hold the frequency of having to be contained just enough and then offer healing during the time and then post the time in order to energetically shift this experience that needed to happen, obviously, because, the same thing is going to happen in 2025 and 2026, is there will be this huge uprise in the chaos frequency and then basically the light workers will be kind of like helping the chaos stay grounded, but at the same time allowing this energy to pipe on out.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh, there's angels on the streets. There are literally angels on the streets. And we're there. And then we're, doing our part. And so that was just one of the examples through our travels where we just basically, unbeknownst to us, but this is always happens to us, go into these situations of complete chaos in order to offset, ground, and balance the energy while the chaos is taking place.
There are so many times when we travel that either there's something chaotic happens, either right before, during, or right after when we go there. We went to Spain, right? Barcelona, right during the Catalonian protests.
Yeah. That was centered around Barcelona.
We were a block away when they didn't they like arrest was it the president of Catalonia or was it the mayor of
it was whoever was in power who was causing this rift.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we were a block away when they arrested him. It was protests in the street. It was crazy. I want to say it wasn't violent. It wasn't scary, but it was.
But we scheduled these things months in advance.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's what's interesting is, the whole episode of this started with me being drawn to the cat in distress and me being there to change the frequency and help the situation, like the chaos, right, of birth. Literally it was birth, right, brings in life. And so, but yeah, right. But that has been my life. And I don't know if that was supposed to be your life or not, but you have kind of
along for the ride,
married yourself into it, that we go into places scheduled months and months in advance that has this plan for chaos.
Yeah.
And then we are basically going in, holding space for the chaos in order for it to birth in a new life.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that, to begin with, when we first started traveling a lot, we were like, this is really strange. This is really strange. This is really strange. But that just has been our story.
It's just normal now.
Yeah.
We almost,
it's really normal.
I mean, it doesn't surprise us anymore.
We just came back from a driving trip where we flew into LA, and then we drove to Vegas, and then from Vegas we went south towards Sedona and Scottsdale. But we fly into LA, and then 2 days after we leave, the fires start, and then we leave LA and we go to Las Vegas, and that's when the cyber truck explodes with the bomb, like a couple blocks away from where we are.
Yep.
And then, and then nothing else happened on that trip.
Yeah.
We went, where else?
We were somewhere, and there was was it Istanbul? There was a bombing shortly before we went. Was it Istanbul or was it, there was somewhere we went.
We went to London right after the
stabbing, the bridge stabbing.
The bridge stabbing.
That's right.
So we went to London right after. And again, the trips are planned way in advance.
Yeah.
And then we go there right at the point of chaos.
Mm.
We went to Turkey right when the Israel war started. And Turkey is just a sea away.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were holding frequency then there. Trying to think what else. Peru was having a protest.
That's right. There was a big election coming up, and it was very contentious. And didn't, I don't know if someone tried to take power or didn't want to let go of power. It was something.
It was basically change. It was a chaotic to where something is dying, right? There's chaos of something going away, and the new is taking place. But yeah, a lot of political unrest. And so just like with Spain, when the power didn't want to shift, we were there. And then in Peru, it was the same thing. It was, there was the shift that was happening place. And then of course, we were right there. So yeah, so universe will kind of just push you into these places.
When you started talking about grid work, I thought you were talking about this was, I guess, in the aftermath of the, Breonna Taylor thing. You were called to put these stone, I guess they're coasters, but they're like,
they needed to be marble, black marble.
Egyptian marble,
mm-hmm.
Egyptian marble, and you carved a flower of life onto 3 of them, and we're going to put 3 throughout the city to kind of triangulate the stuff. And one of them, we went to Cherokee Park, Iroquois Park, and we're hiking through the woods of the park, and we're like, where are we going to put it? Where are we going to put it? Well, and you're like, we'll know when we see it. And we're just hiking along, and then on the steps, there's like someone had spray painted basically a flower, a flower of life. It looked like a flower of life, which is not how you would. If I were to draw a flower, that's not how I would draw a flower. But someone had spray painted it there. It's like, oh, apparently this is where it's going.
Yeah. No, that was So that was
that's probably February 21 because I had a drone and I got that in 2021.
Okay.
I got that Christmas of 2020.
Yeah, in 2021, it dawned on me that what I have been doing all along on Earth is grid work. And so that was like my first conscious effort into the knowing of it. But then, of course, I realized I've been doing it all along. But yeah, that was, and at the time I thought when I first got introduced to it, they channeled to me how to do it. And they took me to this black mountain that was black granite, and it was the most beautiful black granite. And it was somewhere, I don't even know where this is. It's absolutely beautiful. And you have to hike through this valley to get to it. And then you have to hike up. And then at the top of this, so the bottom of it is maybe black granite, but it's not exposed. But at the top of it, there's a lot of exposed black granite. along with grass too, but there's big chunks of it. And so a lot of tourists go here. And so they go there for healing. It's just very huge black granite healing space. And so I come out of this vision and I'm like, oh, I just need to put black granite in order to lock in this grid. And so at the time that I thought that was what I needed to do from the physical standpoint, because, when you're first doing work or start being intuitive, you think you need to do a lot of physical things because you interpret yourself so physically. Only later does it dawn on you the physical interpretation is quite irrelevant. It is the intention, right? So in my case, I put the black granite held my intention, and I thought I needed to put the intention into a physical space in order to bury it in the physical ground. But realistically speaking, if you
don't need to
do
that.
Yeah. So we have done a lot of grid work.
The to me, the craziest part of that story is that we did these three. We did one in which park? Iroquois Park.
Iroquois Park. The second place we did it. Do you remember the sky? The sky opened up and it was a form of an angel. Like sometimes sun has these solar
sun. And it's not exactly a sundog, but it's one of those
crazy.
It's in the same category of rainbow, but it's if we have a picture, I can put it.
Yeah. So this when we buried it in the second spot, and then as we looked up in the sky and we're walking away from this place, there's literally an angel in the sky. And then, of course, I'm intuitively at the time doing my best to be guided into these spots.
Yeah, and the third one's over in Crestwood, and later, I guess it occurs to you or to me to like triangulate what is the center, what is the centroid of this triangle, and it is like within inches. It is right on top of your parents' house
where I grew up,
where you grew up
in the United States.
In the United States.
Yeah.
And which is like, you can't even.
Yeah. So
which is just insane.
So if you have the three spots, the 3 points, and then you basically triangulate the center by splitting this line in half and this line in half and this line in half.
And connect it to the vertexes, yeah.
And the center point turns out to be my parents' house. But that that is a message within itself,
right? That's
to where the triangulation is the intent of the energetic point, and the energetic point, the strongest geometrical shape. We heard this recently as a reminder, but that is triangulation in order to have you basically stabilize the energy.
Yeah,
and so to begin with, a lot of the energy points that I have established were down through the triangulation. And so then it just secures that point. And it's unbreakable, really, because it is my personal intent.
Yeah.
And so, like the first one I did was during the planetary alignment. The first one I did that was not in the United States, where I was conscious of doing it, was in Aruba.
Oh, yeah.
During the planetary alignment. And I was like, wait. And I was guided into it. I was like, I woke up, right? And then I'm intuitive enough to where I kind of go into that daze meditative state first thing when I wake up, and I'm just laying there. I'm like, oh, and then whenever you travel into the area, that there's frequencies that are different than what you used to at home. So I'm always curious, and I'm always reading the frequency. And so then all of a sudden, I go into this fugue state, and I'm like establishing light grids, and I'm like, wait, what's happening? But I kind of went with it, and that was the first one. But this is after. Wait, this is before we did the Louisville one, because then I come back and I'm like, oh wait, I can do grids.
It was a month or two before.
Yeah, and of course, at the time when we did the grid in Louisville was during the Breonna Taylor accident, where there was a lot of riots in our city.
Accident.
Well, point of chaos.
Yeah.
To where shift needed to take place and something needed to rebirth itself.
I don't remember if George Floyd was right before or right after, but that was just like
back to back.
They kind of fed on each other.
Mm-hmm. It was the same frequency. But the riots in Chicago were similar too, because
there was an African American kid. I think it was like 17 or 19. I think it was a minor. Maybe it was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And he got shot by the police, but maybe he had a gun. I don't remember the details. But he was shot. Black kid shot by the police.
Yeah, at the time where there's all this, Black Lives Matter movement.
Well, it was just every other week there's another there was just another police shooting. It seemed like
Yeah.
there for a couple of years.
Yeah. But it's the energy of inequality that was coming up.
Yeah, it's the very embodiment of that.
Yeah. It was coming up at the time. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any others. Do you have any others?
Nope.
Yeah. Anyway, so like the reason I guess I wanted to have this episode is because it was like a little bit more fun and less
Get to work.
Yeah. But because I guess I wanted to highlight it is because the universe, each soul that comes here has this huge purpose. Huge. Each one of us huge. Like not just like this is just an example of how mine is. But if you go back to your childhood and you go through all that time and you go, okay, what am I birthing, right? Like you're birthing something into this world. Everybody is birthing something into this world. And then you just kind of have to look back and go, okay, what was I birthing when I was a child when I didn't know I was birthing it? And that is the best way for you to figure out what your life's purpose is. And I'm not saying that you're supposed to like change what you're doing or rewrite your life to the purpose.
Yeah, but it can be some insight into that.
Yeah. And so all of these crazy stories, the reason why I love them so much is because everybody loves like these personalized, like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But those are the stories where you see the magic, right? And then to me, right, something that I have always struggled with in my life is like, we always talk about this is like purpose. Like, what is purpose, right? Like, what do you have to do, or how do you find yourself, or all of that, right? And then if you have been living in a three-dimensional space and you have been interpreting reality very three-dimensionally, if your purpose is not three-dimensional and it's etheric and it's larger than life, like to me, mine feels larger than life, right? It is very difficult to like grab onto it and stay with it if you're so used to functioning three-dimensionally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the purpose is never, it could have three-dimensional interpretations and it could have three-dimensional effects or outflows, right? To where like if you're doing, like in my case, if I'm doing energy work energetically on the frequency band, it has physical ramifications.
Yeah.
But it is not necessarily a physical interpretation of things. And that's hard, right? Because like we're so three-dimensionally
But that was
driven.
That was yours and my path. The graduation is, you start off literally burying marble physically. And only then do you realize, oh, well, that isn't necessary.
Yeah. No, I know. And
evolution maybe is a better way than graduation.
Yeah. But that, also it comes down to, it's interesting because I see other people who are doing grid work. And recently we heard other people talking about grid work, right? And Matthias does grid work. And all of them seems to take some sort of form, natural crystalline form, and then put it into the offering, into the ground.
Yeah, that seems to be very...
Or deposit it.
That's the way everybody does it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's, right, because to some extent, from the physicality, it is an expression of me, right, and my intent being deposited in a physical form into the space, and so therefore changing the space based on the intent that I inserted in there. But the second you kind of rise into this like, oh, wow, I'm not physical, right? And then even though I can insert a message into a physical space, I don't have to. Plus it's cheaper and you don't have to fly with thousands of crystals in your suitcase. You realize like, oh yeah, I don't need it. But I thought, this is another thing that I thought of at the time, because I did not necessarily have the belief or like the maybe self-confidence to know how strong I can affect an environment without a physical interpretation, right? Like that kind of helped my confidence boosting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, I guess it's a crutch, and sometimes you need crutches, and sometimes eventually you realize you don't need crutches.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying
It's not
it
bad,
doesn't work.
not in a bad way. It's just, it's a tool.
Yeah, it's a belief structure. Yeah. Anyway, so for what it's worth, maybe if you're still in the process of finding self, and then you don't have to be looking for these crazy experiences. You already have them in your life, right? We're not looking for them. We're just kind of like for the most part, know who we are.
Yeah.
But you can start looking back and going, oh wait, look,
that was weird.
That was weird, and then that was weird, and that's interesting how that came out and that came out. And then the universe will just kind of like have that in front of you all along. Like you're right, you kind of like looking back at this. I have known this all along, right? And as long as I can remember, like, oh look, the first thing that I did was like heal something that I was drawn to energetically that was in distress.
Yeah.
And then that was it. So, thanks for listening.